For most of our history, we foraged plants, as well as scavenged and hunted for our food. These hunter-gatherer lifeways are no longer the primary means of provision for the overwhelming majority of human beings, and for the civilizations that house them, and instead the primary means of feeding come from domesticated species of both plants and animals. Up until around 12,000 years ago, farming was unheard of, aside from one lone site from which evidence of even earlier plant cultivation exists. But after close to 300,000 years of us being around and spreading across the globe without farming, farming sprung up in numerous places independently within a couple of thousand years of each other. The transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture, along with many of the techniques and technologies that improved agriculture across time, massively increased the amount of available food per square mile, and population densities were enabled to increase accordingly. Eventually, this story leads to cities, states, and civilizations, and takes us up to the next major threshold of big history of the 18th century, modernity. But in this video, we'll be staying well within the early agrarian era, the time period from around 12,000 years ago when agriculture first got going to around 5,500 years ago when the first city appeared. The rest of the video will provide a brief overview of the beginnings and spread of agriculture. Evidence for cultivation of plants goes back 23,000 years ago to the shore of the Sea of Galilee at the site of Ohalo II. But despite this early evidence, agriculture did not take off in any serious way for more than a further 10,000 years. Around 11,000 BP, farming began to be practiced in the Fertile Crescent of Southwestern Asia, and around that time or shortly thereafter, possibly not independently however, it arose in the Nile basin of Egypt. From the Fertile Crescent, farming spread to Central Asia and across Europe. Eventually, the first city in history, Uruk, would arise in the Fertile Crescent some 5,500 years ago. In Egypt, more farming villages popped up across time, and by 6,000 years ago, there were dozens of farming villages along the Nile. By 5150 BP, agriculture provided for most of their food, and Egypt was unified by King Narmer, and the history of the Old Kingdom of Egypt begins. Around 1,000 years after agriculture got started in Southwestern Asia, by 10,000 BP, and independent of connections with their Western counterpart, East Asia had farmers along the shores of the Yangtze River. And East Asia also had farmers along the Huanghe River as well, by at least 8,500 BP. The Yangtze River of southern China had people farming rice, and rice farming spread from there across time to both India and Southeast Asia. In contrast to the rice-based agriculture of the south, the north's Huanghe's agricultural base was millet. By 7,000 years ago, cultivation of taro and other crops was occurring in Papua New Guinea, possibly another instance of an independent development of farming. Possibly having come from Southwest Asia, cultivation of wheat reached the west of the Indus Valley in modern-day Pakistan by 8250 BP, and by 5000 BP, hundreds of villages, some fortified, lie across the plains of the Indus Valley. At this point, farming was also flourishing along the Ganges River and beyond. Cities had emerged by some 300 years later. West Africa had significant farming by 3000 BP, spreading from there into both Central and South Africa. In the Americas, early agriculture flourished in multiple places: the highlands of the Central Andes, the highlands and lowlands of Central America, and the southeastern United States. Cultivation of squash appeared by about 10,000 BP, as brought to us by the Guila Naquitz rock shelter, and cultivation of maize appeared by 6250 BP, and other less clear sites bring the date farther back still. By 5,000 years ago, maize was widely grown in Central America, and it soon started trundling out to the southwest of North America. The Peruvian coast saw limited early agriculture from sometime around 6,000 BP, as testified by the remains at Paloma. And cultivation of some sort likely picks up by 4,000 BP in southeastern North America.